the word artificial intelligence was coined in a summer workshop. And we all think that like today AI is hype. OpenAI hyped it up.
Yeah.
Anthropic is there. Google is there. And people think, hey, it's a bubble or not. These guys tried to hype it up in 1956. That Turing got prosecuted because he was gay. So instead of using the word neural network, they were like, okay, I know that people are going to hate me if I do neural network. And they started using the word deep learning as a new thing. But
You might know this already. Geoffrey Hinton's student was Elias Utskover, who basically he co-founded OpenAI.
And another fun fact is when they launched 3.5 to public, they had 4 already trained and in place.
Crazy, yeah.
Hi, everyone who is watching this. Today, we are going to discover something, or like we're going to tap into something that a lot of people are not doing it. You might have seen the word AI in the thumbnail. You might have seen the AI in my channel. It's everywhere today. And we all think that how come like AI became mainstream? Like, how did it happen in 2 years? Like, ChatGPT got released. It's been like, 3 years and it became mainstream. Everyone is talking about it. People are talking about, hey, I'm using AI, I'm upskilling AI. And how did this happen in 3 years? Someone asked me this. You know what the answer I gave? It didn't happen in 3 years. It took 7 decades for AI to be here where it is today. And even I didn't know this. And you shouldn't think when I say 7 decades, like 70 years, it is not 70 years of research and 3 years of execution. No, it took 70 years of execution to be here. And that's what we're going to dissect, and we're going to dive deep into what we're going to do. And you might wonder, we have like a special guest. It's so special because like I know Shri for the past 6 months. It's been 6 months, right? And we talked a lot. And this guy, whenever I talk to, he always talk about AI. He's the AI geek in a very good way, in a positive way. And he taught me a lot of things. So I think I remember him saying like, whenever we bring in a conversation, 70% of the time it's going to be about AI. And that's how it was. And I learned a lot from him. Today, I thought, why don't we discover the history of AI? What happened before ChatGPT? Like, we know it's 70 years, as I mentioned, but what happened? Like, why did it take 70 years? And how did it change? How did it change and how did it become mainstream in 3 years? And Sri is going to help us understand that 70 years of life. And why is it important to you? So, if you are trying to get into AI, or even if you are kind of like getting started in AI, I believe this conversation is going to be super helpful. The reason being, only if you know how it started and where the first step was, it'll be easy for you to understand what happened next. So that's what we're going to discover. And why, you might wonder, why Shri and why Hari? Why should I listen to two people, two random guys yapping about AI? So I'll give you a brief introduction about both of us. We both are AI engineers and we used to work together in a YC-backed startup. And now I quit my job. I'm a founder. I'm building something. But before giving my intro, let's hear from Shri about, hey, Shri, I
Hi.
hope I gave enough build up about you, but would like to understand
Yes, thank you.
what's your background.
Okay. So yes. Hi, my name is Sripad and I'm currently an AI engineer at a YC-backed startup. We do generative AI for financial advisors and wealth managers. It's called Saturn. And yeah, Hari and I worked together for about 3 months and that was pretty fun. And Hari went on to do Flex.
It's about you. I'll give an intro about me.
Oh, okay.
Feel free to
Oh, is it?
boast about you. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Cool. Prior to that, I worked on a lot of open source models as well as building production pipelines in generative AI pipelines as well as just regular NLP pipelines, data pipelines. But yeah, that's for me.
To add on that, I know one bad thing about Shri is he plays humble. I'll tell a few other things that Shri has done. So he is an open source guy and he contributes to Hugging Face, an AI community. Remind me again, Shri, how many people have downloaded your open source model?
So roughly all time downloads touch about 14 million. Yeah.
14
million. Yeah.
million people have downloaded his open source model. And I think you mentioned Amazon has used your open source model in their workflow, right? And recently, OpenAI has published his work in their paper or blog.
Yeah. They had used one. I was part of a company called AI for Privacy, and there I was part of creating or helping create a data set and fine tune models for a data set that was part of their benchmark that they used for the open privacy filter.
So yeah, now I think the audience might have gotten an understanding of why I said Sri as an AI geek, and also it's so happy like that you're humble and you have done a lot of things, but still that's really cool. And I hope people are gonna learn lot from you. And a quick intro about me and why I'm trying to do this and what's the motivation behind this. I'm Hari. I come from a non-technical background. I did my bachelor's in mechanical. Then I moved to data science. I moved to New York. I did my master's in data science from Columbia University. I worked for a gaming company in New York for more than 3 years. And then I moved to London. I was working with Sri. I joined a YC back startup, the same startup that you mentioned. And I was working as a senior AI engineer over there. And then I quit my job. Right now I'm part of Antler. I'm building my own company. The motivation behind this is when I got into this field, I didn't have a lot of help, like at least personal help to help me understand how to navigate everything. Internet helped me basically, like blogs, articles, like YouTube videos and stuff helped me to be here. So that's when I decided, hey, if I learn something out of this journey, I should always give it back through my blogs, LinkedIn posts, or videos. And this podcast that we are recording is part of something called a reality show by My Real Product. I run like a 4 week AI workshop to help people break into learn and build AI in 4 weeks. And we do podcasts like this, and it's part of the reality show. So that's the very boring short background about the motivation and us. Now let's get into the actual content of why we are here. Coming back to the actual content. So what are we gonna do? Agenda for today is pretty simple. I wanna learn everything from you. And I also want to have a conversation about what exactly happened before ChatGPT. ChatGPT, all know that ChatGPT was released on November 30, 2022, and it changed the game. Everyone's talking about it. It was a spark point, and we all think that is the start of AI, which is not. As I mentioned, there are like 70 years of AI development that happened before that. As I remember, I think it started in 1950. It was like so long ago, right? That's when the AI development started. That's what I read. And what happened? What happened in 1950? And I'll leave it to you to take us back in history and tell us what happened in 1950.
Absolutely. Now, I think post ChatGPT world is like super aligned with AI, or like they're like in touch with AI. AI has become pretty much ubiquitous at this point. Cost is dropping as we speak, and intelligence is increasing release by release. So I think ChatGPT kind of changed the game when came to that. Like 1 million users in 5 days, 100 million in 2 months. It's phenomenal that it occurred. And the better question that we can ask is like, how come it took 10 years, 12 years of solid, deep learning research, as well as lots of primitives that were established all the way back from 50s all the way to like 1980s. And then from 80s, there was like another wave that occurred in the 80s and 90s. But like all of them were short. There were a lot of AI winters that occurred where a lot of research just like did not go. But after post 2010s, I think it has rampantly taken off in terms of research. If we plot a graph over 1,000 years, it would have been a straight line up. So I think with every AI release that's going steeper and steeper, and super important to understand where all this came from and why we are structuring the next generation of models the way we are. Yeah. Let's go back to 1950s. At that point, AI does not start as a product. It starts more like a philosophical question, more like, can machines think? Can we even have machines do calculations for us? All of this goes back to,
So basically, like I think before machines started thinking, people started asking, "Hey, can it think? How can we evaluate whether it's thinking or not?"
yeah,
Right? That's okay. Yeah.
basically. It's the thing is, it started out as like simple calculators
Hmm.
by then, and the infamous used in the 1950s was by like Alan Turing, where he made the Enigma machine to crack the German code. But that's essentially where cryptography, all of the entire fields come through in
Okay.
So like there are
So what do you mean by
different
that? Like, can you
subjects.
expand more on that? Alan Turing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I,
Yeah. He basically reframed intelligence into something that is observable. Like
okay.
he made the question that a question can be testable instead of like just debating about, oh yes, we can have this could be the possibility. He asked like, can a machine behave intelligently enough that we cannot tell the difference? And that
Mm-hmm.
birthed the very first Turing test, and that started the quest for AI. Then a lot of sci-fi picked up saying that, okay, this is possible. Then we have so much, and infamous Skynet is an infamous example for that, where it ends up killing all humans.
I think I watched the movie Imitation Game, and also like I think that kind of became mainstream. But I remember like in the story, right, the Turing story, you know what happens? First, people when they started asking, can machines think? They all went back to that question of, hey, does machines have conscience?
Hmm.
Can machines have a soul?
Exactly.
So that is irrelevant to this, what they are trying to say. I think that's how the Turing test was born. That's how like Turing, like,
Basically, so like instead
yeah.
of like, so basically people at that time were doing a lot of debating as well as like theoretical solutions, but
Mhm.
he practically said that, hey, this is observable, verifiable, and repeatable. So they just started.
So he just built a system around it.
Yes, and that essentially is like couple of building blocks for scaling, right? Like at that
Hmm.
point, from whatever resource he had, he was like, okay, this is how we scale it. It's like, yes, today's enigma can be broken, tomorrow something else will be broken. So that's how like adaptation happens in like intelligence. But yes,
So again, we are talking about 1950s,
50s.
around that time. So is AI a thing yet?
AI is not fully a thing yet, but people are like, yes, there is something here. The thing is, at this time, machines were being built to
Okay,
do even basic binary was just like this
computer.
a computer exactly was just being built by now. We don't even have. Yeah, I think people were asking questions theoretically still. I think in the 60s after the perceptron, things started getting a bit faster. People had a bit more understanding. And after that, there was like a winter, and then came LSTMs. And we'll get into that later in
Yep,
today's
yep.
episode. But
I know what happened exactly. Like I think so that was a decade, right? Like the 1950 to 60. Like who coined the word AI, the artificial intelligence. I don't know the name, but it was a part of a summer workshop. Like you didn't know that? Okay, let me tell you that. I don't know the name though. Who did it? It's part of the word artificial intelligence was coined in a summer workshop, and we all think that like today AI is hype. OpenAI hyped it up.
yeah,
Anthropic is there. Google is there, and people think, hey, it's a bubble or not. These guys tried to hype it up in 1956. Like, in a summer workshop, what they did is they asked for government funding, saying that, hey, we are going to build the artificial intelligence, which is going to be as good as human intelligence. And they asked for a government funding and they hyped it up. And the winter that you're talking about, by the way, I think to clarify, the winter that you're mentioning is like the AI downfall,
yeah,
right? We are expecting a downfall today, but the downfall already happened. The first time it happened in, yeah, yeah, in 1960 for the first time, right? Yeah. So it's all because of these guys who hyped it up, saying that, hey, I'm going to build AI over summer project.
yeah, that is true. So the thing is that happened, I think, in Dartmouth, and John
Yep.
McCarthy was the guy
Yep.
who coined the
Yeah.
term AI in 1955,
Okay.
55, 56, and that was the summer that you were talking about.
Okay.
This the analogy from this agenda is like quite useful. There is a startup analogy for this. Like it's almost like the 1950s YC were there in Dartmouth that time. And Dartmouth is famously an Ivy League.
Yep. Yep. It is.
Dartmouth
Isn't it
usually
that mouth? No, I don't even know how to pronounce that. It's an Ivy League though.
it's almost like they were like, instead of like doing SaaS for dentists, they were like, we're gonna like recreate an entire set or like create a new type of intelligence altogether.
Mm,
At
mm,
that point, they were almost trying to mimic the human brain of
mm-hmm,
intelligence. They were like,
mm-hmm.
we have neurons, we have a certain brain structure and information pattern highways. Let's just like build that into these binary machines. And I think that's how they came closer and closer to this topic of like artificial intelligence. But like the first thing that happened to them was very famous, and that's truly just because of optimism. They made AI they basically did the YC thing today and sold it like anything. And people
Okay.
are like, okay, there isn't the infrastructure to build this, nor will it give us the disproportionate gain that you're trying to sell us. So they had the ambition of AGI, but there was no compute, no data, and there was honestly no abstraction at that point. Like I think languages were just like getting formalized. We were just building. It was still a lot of mathematics and theoretical math. So they really build that. I mean, it came out in like, I don't know. It's been there for a while, but it was there since like 1968 in the
So it
70s.
started after these people sold the dream of AI,
Yeah,
right?
this started
Okay. So,
after that.
but what's your take on that? Like, what's your take on like so today, as you mentioned, YC, Y Combinator is hyping up AI and they're trying to boost AI a lot.
Yeah,
And these guys try to do that in 1950. Is that a good thing? Because there was a downfall after that. But is that a
absolutely.
good
Like the one question I would ask you is like, do you think it failed because the idea was wrong, or like the world didn't accept it, right? Like the world wasn't ready for this kind of. They didn't even understand. The cars were just getting more efficient.
Hmm.
Just it's been like 50 years since oil was discovered. Abundance in general was there. So, and they were going to war to fund all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, they're too ahead of the time when they
Yeah.
coined the word AI. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, I would say ahead of the time, but that was my conclusion. What do you think? Do you think the idea in itself was framed in a weird way?
Maybe the thing is, I feel like it's kind of obvious. They are the one who coined it, maybe professionally, I guess. Today we are talking, right? We are talking about like AGI. No one like introduced or like launched an AGI proper product yet, but people started talking about it. And people like to talk about the future. We have always been talking about like flying cars, exploring the entire Milky Way, and all those things. We never did that, but I think as humans, we have the curiosity. I think these are the guys who formally put out the curiosity. I think that way, I think it's good. Okay. Now the bigger question. You know what happened? By the way, interesting fact. Since we are in the Turing's and 1950, you know that Turing got prosecuted because he was gay. Yep.
Yes,
So
unfortunately.
we were, yeah. So we were that backward. We are in 1950, and it's so like crazy to think like, okay, such things are happening in the society, and there are people who are coining artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
Can't even like
absolutely.
map these two things happen in the same era, right?
Exactly. They're very far apart, and it- we just lost of a genius, right? Like at that point, like he built his own substrate for compute. Like, he built his own computer
Yep.
essentially.
Yep.
Post that, like computers are starting to get everywhere. People are building microchips. That Intel takes off after Bell Labs, and again after 1970s, Intel does really well. And as compute starts getting better and better, I think in the East to 2000s, there's a lot
No,
of.
like before going to the 80s and 2000s. Now I'm curious. So today AI is a hype, and this guys like people from an Ivy League or summer they hyped up AI already. It was in 50s and 60s. Why did it take so long, and what happened after?
So I think it took so long because the entire internet was being built, right?
Hmm.
We were laying sea cables all across.
Mm-hmm.
We're still figuring out all of how to connect the entire world first.
Okay.
Before we even start, we didn't have the data for it. All we had were a few puzzles, maybe chess and
Hmm.
games, but we didn't have that amount of data or information to put into any kind of use. Because
Mm-hmm.
at that point, people were so. See, the thing is, at that point, if it's so easy and usable and it actually adds like value, then they would just take it. At that point, AI was sold like, oh, you're gonna have robots by the next 20 years or something. You'll
Yep.
have a machine that'll talk to you about what the future is, or something. Things like that, right?
It's true.
Um,
Yeah.
they basically, yes, they were not wrong to sell it that way. They just sold it because they believed it that deep, right? Like they were like, oh yes, this is gonna really change the world. And that's what they were like building a company for and everything.
I mean, even today, that is kind of true, right? Like the commercial value of AI is still kind of in the future,
Ahead of the future.
right? Yep. Yep. Which means, yeah,
People are
in
still they're
1960,
starting to use. If you see, like the market's starting to consolidate within Microsoft, Google, Apple. But yeah, that's a discussion for a different day. Right now, where they have been shorted technically. Their idea got shorted and they were just like, oh,
Okay. And there was a downfall from their AI, as you said, AI winter. So there was kind of like a pause for 10, 20 years,
so
which means.
I wouldn't say pause. There was still like tiny papers being produced. Like
Okay.
one famous 1 second. So even then, Rosenblatt from that era wrote a very good paper about the very perceptron that is there. So he
Mhm.
coined the word perceptron, where it would take a set of input, it had a set of weight, and it had a set of biases. So
Okay.
input weights and biases, even now that's used even in the transformer model, was like from that era.
Okay.
I wouldn't say people were doing research, but research was still not very mainstream, or it was not commercialized, or did not find any commercial use yet. They
Okay.
were still in papers, as I said. Perceptron was coined in 1957, and from 57 all the way till like 80s, it was really not, it didn't even take off anywhere because
Okay.
the substrate wasn't present. Like it did not
Okay.
find its effect from hardware or something. So, yeah.
And also, now, I think you had my curiosity by saying that nothing took off until 80s, which means something happened in the 80s. What happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Like a lot happened in the 80s because people started traveling.
Mm.
I think commercial jets were just taking off. There was a lot of, and at that point, large amount of money would basically move through checks. Checks have to be signed,
Okay.
signatures need to be verified, and even checks need to be verified. So, like
Okay.
that is in the late 80s. Those projects started out, and in the 2000s, that was heavily used in the 1990s to 2000s.
Okay.
In the 80s, the rules were being defined. The
Mhm.
main systems were the first serious commercial AI wave, expert systems.
Okay.
And these expert systems were essentially super fine tuned for a particular vertical,
Mhm.
and they would just solve one particular problem, right? Like
Mm.
they won't be able to solve a generalized solution set. They'll just have a one tiny use. It'll take that human knowledge, encode it into like any kind of rule, and they'll just let the machine reason through it, through those rules. And those rules were not essentially open-ended natural language ones. They were steps and instructions it had to follow.
Basically, like if else conditions.
Yeah, essentially. Essentially, if else conditions, again, you know why it breaks, because like real world has too many edge cases and rules don't really bend. They kind of break. They tend to break. You'll go. Thing is, at that point, the rule set started just like increasing. People just were like, oh, I cannot maintain all of this cognitive load, and then nobody knows why the system made a decision. Like, which is why they didn't have that observability feedback loop, all of it, when they spoke about it back then.
Okay. And so I was reading about this too when I was prepping for this podcast. So they mentioned expert systems, as you said, expert systems. Like, so does this come under like AI? Because like it feels like an algorithm. When you
Yes.
say if else and stuff, it's like a typical algorithm. Computers were already there. What do they mean by computers before that? What is expert system, or what's the difference between expert system and a algorithm or like typical computer program?
So an expert system right now would, so basically there's a problem space,
Hmm.
and right now if else or a rules or anything or a computer program, for example, would just solve for those closed sets
Hmm.
and only those. But whereas expert systems, they have a range to it
Okay.
that can, of the kind of solutions it can solve. For example, expert systems at that point would solve things like tiny puzzles like Tower of Hanoi or something. And Tower of Hanoi has its own algorithm,
Hmm.
but that's just a paper way of putting it, right?
It will explain what do you mean by Tower of Hanoi? What is that?
So we know there is a famous puzzle called Tower of Hanoi.
Okay.
Right now, expert systems were systems, essentially they would be trained on a 3-column Tower of Hanoi.
Okay.
And essentially, if you write an algorithm or program for it, it can solve only for a particular 3-row Tower of Hanoi. But the
Okay.
expert system was essentially trained only to do 3 Tower of Hanoi. And it essentially was able to generalize for like 5 Tower of Hanoi, or like with,
Okay.
yeah. So essentially, it was able to generalize forward.
Okay. Okay.
So
So like in today's terms, what we call it as like artificial intelligence was kind of there with expert systems in the
yes,
80s.
but it was only able to do Tower of Hanoi,
Okay.
basically. So the difference there would be like you can write a program to do 3 Tower of Hanoi and 5 Tower of Hanoi, but the moment you have 7 Tower of Hanoi, you will have to adjust your system.
Okay.
Um,
And that is
And
the bottleneck.
essentially, the system includes the AI and the code, the algorithm that's written in it.
Okay. Okay. And you said this expert system, the first AI use case in the 80s, was used in like banking system, right? Like checks and stuff.
Yeah.
What was that? So that
But
is surprising because I think today, I think kind of finance is the sector which is kind of outdated using, I know people
why
working in, because I know people who are working in finance, they still use Excel or like
yeah, of course,
some,
do use Excel. Like, they definitely do use Excel. The thing with it all started out with the MNIST dataset,
hmm?
where it could recognize digits, and once they were able to max on that benchmark, which we famously call benchmarking nowadays, if they were able to solve that solution set, they expanded it to signatures. So
Okay.
they would essentially,
So the MNIST dataset happened in 80s.
yeah, 80s and 90s.
Okay. Oh, okay. Interesting.
I think I'm off on that, but let me just verify for you. Yeah, it was born around 1994, and widely released version was in 1998. So in the 90s, MNIST pretty much took over a lot.
Okay. Okay.
So it,
Because like I studied that. I was not even born at that time.
yeah.
So I studied that in like 2020 or something. I thought that was like a new thing, but looks like okay, that has its own history, right? Okay, now coming back,
So going
to
back,
keep,
like give you
yeah,
like a summary or like just like uh, give you like a feed forward, like a fast forward there.
yeah,
In the 80s, we just started writing formal programs.
okay,
The reason why 80s is also like a boom is because we started doing formal programs. Once we had a deepened understanding in formal programs, we were like, oh, that dream's still present. We can still do that now. We can do that better now. And they started doing it then.
okay,
That essentially evolved in and compounded that entire decade. Started these kind of formalized data sets in 1990s,
okay,
and it started finding commercial use, because the moment we
okay,
started doing digits, we did signatures, then we started doing checks, OCR
okay,
checks, and handwriting recognition, not handwriting recognition, digit recognition from there.
okay. So when you say commercial use, people were building softwares and they're making money out of that.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Okay.
So they famously had, again, use in banks, use
Mm.
in like aviation a lot, because there a lot of checks would be handed out across regions, which
Okay.
needed to be fed fast into the system. It was still used
Okay.
at ingestion time.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So this was in like 80s, 90s and stuff. And then we know what happened in 2000s.
Like 2000s, it started becoming really mainstream. Like
Mm,
we started this formal deep learning revolution over there in 2006. For decades, like neural networks were treated like weird. They were kind of treated like side quests, and in after that, it just started to compound further and further. They were like, it could essentially, intelligence could emerge from a set of layered representations.
mm.
When mainstream had moved on, he was still pushing for it.
So now we are in 80s. And as you mentioned, like expert systems were born and like people started using AI, that like digit recognition, number recognition and
That was,
stuff in
yeah,
commercial use.
like 90s. Is
Yeah, in 90s.
in
Okay.
90s formal programming started.
Okay. And there was a downfall around this time, right?
No,
So
this, yeah,
So because this time the AI was hyped up again, especially like the neural network was super famous this time. People were using the word neural network everywhere, even in the around the 80s and stuff. But I remember, I think IBM released this. This was the moment. If you remember, like I think if ever AI documentary is gonna take place, I think they're gonna start here. The IBM release of the computer which can play against a human, and they, I think they did a
this is
live match or something against the grandmaster, right? Yeah, so this was in 1997, so this was
yeah,
before. Okay.
1996 and 97.
Okay.
Basically, the AI system was called. This was an expert system again,
Okay.
which played only chess. Which
Okay.
is an input board chessboard. It would give an output chessboard. The
Okay.
output base would again be 64 to 64.
Okay.
There's an
And do you know the interesting fact what happened there? So it was playing, the computer was playing against the grandmaster,
Gary
and it
Kasparov.
moved. It made a very shocking move in the game, and the player, the audience, everyone was shocked. Hey, computer has never
Was,
done this before, and
yeah,
it's doing it now. Later, they realized that move was a software glitch. It was
interesting.
never meant to happen. It's
Wow.
just like wrong. People thought that's intelligence, but it's not. It's just a glitch.
Fair enough. Actually, so the thing is, the story with Kasparov was very interesting because, like, in 19, he was like at that point, Soviet Russia and Russia in general had like,
He is the grandmaster. Like
yeah,
he
had
played
huge
the.
dominance in chess. This was right before Vishian took over. He basically played twice against Kasparov. Like, Kasparov played twice against Deep Blue, one in 96 and
Mhm,
97. In the 96
mhm,
match, Kasparov won. And
mhm.
everybody, at that point, everybody were like AI dooming. They were like, "Oh, fuck, this is not gonna like pan out. Machines can never really be
So
intelligent."
is that the reason for the second downfall, or no?
Call it second downfall because in the 1997 match in New York City, famously held in New York City, Deep Blue essentially won. And when Deep Blue won, people really lost it.
By the way, like for context, for people who are watching, Deep Blue is the so-called AI.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it AI at that point. It would still be called an expert system.
Okay, but it still comes under the umbrella of AI, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
still does come under the umbrella of AI.
okay,
There's a lot of documentary on this.
hmm,
Should definitely go check it out. What happened with respect to Deep Blue? But yeah,
okay. Yeah, what happened? What happened after that? Internet was born,
yeah,
right?
internet started going all over the place.
Mm,
Everybody started getting internet, and people started connecting. Once people started connecting, data started getting created, where everybody has database tables, their business logic, everything on databases, essentially. So then it was tiny revolution started in like 2006 where like for decades people again thought it was like a side quest because of this theatrics of like they thought this deep blue thing was like theatrics. IBM really did not have an AI. They just thought like they were able to beat this, but it's very narrow AI.
mhm,
Only when they realized that okay, this narrow AI will not really solve anything, the notion of general intelligence started coming through. They were like, okay, right now this is not AI. We need to shift the goalpost, saying that general intelligence is what we're like going for. So then Jan LeCun started pushing this, saying that hey, intelligence could emerge from like just layered representations. People, even though people are against this because they were like, oh, right now we can only solve for narrow AI. J will never come and things like that. It can never generalize itself. Post 2000, all of that was happening in 2006, 2007. In 2011 and 12, there's this very famous competition called ImageNet.
mhm,
And there was a moment in that where there was a model called AlexNet. It's a
mhm.
CNN based model. It basically exploded the entire AI revolution because it just didn't win the ImageNet competition. It made deep learning almost impossible to ignore because at that point, ImageNet, the data set in itself is quite simple. So essentially, ImageNet was like a massive data set.
Mhm,
It's just visual database designed for like
mhm.
computer vision research. The famous example is, I would say, is like dog versus cat. In the image data set, you can basically create a classifier to do either. And the funny TV reference for this would be like Jin Yang's famous hot dog or not hot dog. So this was like back then. This was part of that data set, and like people would essentially create models to classify them because there were so many classes. It was also quite hard.
Mhm.
AlexNet basically changed that moment where in 2012 they were able to get the highest in that leaderboard, beating everyone. It's a very famous researcher called Fei Fei Li, and she was essentially she created this in Stanford in like
Okay.
2012. So that went all really well, and people were like, okay, it can start doing all of this. Let's try to like start doing more. This doesn't look like a toy anymore. This can actually start solving real problems. Technical, the accessibility improved phenomenally after 2012.
Okay.
Your data, big data was starting to take off.
Mm.
People started buying a lot more GPUs because GPUs started becoming more mainstream. Um,
But the reason was not data, by the way,
yeah,
right? Like GPU was becoming mainstream because of gaming.
yes. GPUs
Yeah.
they just started launching GPUs in like
Okay.
2006 they started launching GPUs. Then in 12 they started
Like
perfecting.
who did it?
It was mostly
NVIDIA.
Nvidia that were doing it.
Okay.
They
Okay.
have been the key player ever since because they realized that they can do faster and faster matrix multiplications.
Mhm.
And using that, they can render video faster. They also realized that, okay, if it's doing video this fast, we can do image faster and we can use that to teach a model. So yeah, I think after 2012, the arms race really begins. Like,
Wait a minute. Let's go to that 2012 later.
yeah,
I think you forgot a very key player from 80s and early 2000.
who is it?
Geoffrey Hinton.
Yes, okay. Geoffrey Hinton was a very key player in this at this time as well.
Yep.
He was pushing commercial.
No, so that's why like I read about Geoffrey Hinton today. Like I'll tell you why you forgot,
Okay,
because that was the reason too. Like he was not mainstream at all.
okay,
Like so the thing is, people also call him like Godfather of AI or
yeah,
Father of AI.
father of AI.
Which one? Father of AI. Okay. So people call him today, but during this time, he did a lot of stuff, but it was not recognized. And I also found the reason that he was doing it. He was from Canada, by the way. So University of Toronto, like he was like researching. He's the one who published a paper on back propagation,
Yes,
the
absolutely.
kind of way how neural network works. And he got actually a lot of backlash. Like everyone, hey, hype number one happened, it
Yeah,
fell down. AI hype number two happened, it fell down. And for like a period of decade, no one was talking about AI around that early 2000s. Even when you mentioned about 2000, you're going to 2012. But around this 19, like 2000 to 2010, no one was talking about this because internet was a thing. I'm pretty sure as VCs are pouring money into like AI, they don't care about the other industry. Similar thing would have happened in 2000 to 2010. Like people are putting money into internet, but not anything
not
related to
into
AI.
yes.
Yeah, but this guy, Geoffrey Hinton, he was continuously working on like he was working on it. So at this time, especially, if anyone brings up the word neural network, that's it. They're gonna get a backlash from everyone because two times the hype happened and two times it fell down. People were scared to even mention the word neural network, and that's how the word deep learning was born. So instead of using the word neural network, they were like, okay, I know that people are gonna hate me if I do neural network, and they started using the word deep learning as a new thing, but it's literally the same thing. And Geoffrey Hinton, people think Geoffrey Hinton played an important role, not because he became mainstream or he did something great, but he's the one who was holding on to all the research during this phase when everyone just gave up on AI. So yeah,
That's
but yeah.
very interesting because this all of this was happening parallelly. People were publishing a lot of good research. A lot of them were underrated, and very few found success in taking this deep learning mainstream commercial, finding commercial applications. And famously, if you might know this already, Geoffrey Hinton's student was Elias Utskover, who basically he co-founded OpenAI. Dennis Hassabis was also his student. He is a CEO of like DeepMind. So all of them have their roots absolutely with Geoffrey Hinton.
Mhm.
And every transform model basically has roots back to Geoffrey Hinton. But yes,
Yep. And okay, so these things happen, and I think let's come back to 2012.
hmm,
Views were a thing, as
yeah.
you said, like the CNN model became mainstream because of the competition. What happened after that? Now we are
So I think
pretty close.
the way
We are in the final decade.
even that, right, like the understanding, CNNs were there, the CNNs have been there for a while now at that point, but the way they actually won the competition was by something called scaling, and they basically made the bigger model much bigger and put more data into it,
Hmm.
and that's how they were able to win that. I think Ilyas Sutskever was the one of the authors of the AlexNet paper. He
Okay.
famously went and co-founded OpenAI, and that's how they became super famous later on in the 2018 time.
It feels like kind of like I don't know how to call it. It feels like a cult, right? Like the people that you're talking about, like the history, as you said, they are somehow related to each other.
Mm,
And
absolutely.
even today,
See,
right?
that's
Big
what I
players.
would call, it's a circle, right? At the end of
Hmm.
the day, world, there are only so many people around. There are only so many people interested in one particular topic, and there is only so many people who are gonna understand that particular topic because they study it or they use it day to day, right? Not everyone's gonna know about everyone all the time. Right now, AI is in a super high moment. Tomorrow it might not be, or tomorrow it might be robotics. It might completely shift over to robotics, and the first $1 trillion company might be the Neo robot, right? But yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that was not absolutely not. And there are definitely a lot of trillion-dollar companies, but
Yep.
I would say like 100 trillion companies.
Yep. So now again going back to the 2012, I see what's gonna come next because that's we are the final decade. Like I kind of know what happened. Now it became kind of mainstream. I before going there, I want to understand. It's just talking about neural network, deep learning, AI systems. But when did this data science became mainstream? What is machine learning and all these things? Is that like a parallel thing that happened, or is it completely related?
By then, it was just taking off, right? Like
Mhm.
I would say post mobiles coming in, big data started
Which is
really thing.
which is when like
I think
2010.
smartphones, yeah, I think 2008,
Okay.
iPhone 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
From
Okay.
then, App Store came in 2009.
Okay.
So I think after that, need for bigger data because now we have moved the surface of interaction and that moved from desktops to thin desktops to laptops to like mobile phones, right? Like at that point, people started, they had to like capture data from all these surfaces. So big data was really born and like it was like taking over a lot from that because they were like, we should actually use this to do something, prevent our customers from getting out. Or sample churn is one of those, right? So I think machine learning and big data, data science, actually data analytics, all of those was it has been there. Facebook started in 2006. It started, I think, data analyst from 2008 or something. Started just like going from there,
Mm-hmm.
like data
Mm-hmm.
scientists. So because they manage a lot of information, essentially.
Okay.
Information
Okay.
that might be like about a region, about a particular demographic, slice of latitude, longitude, anything, right? So
So
that
based on what you're saying, it looks like even though people who are working in data and people who are working in AI have the similar skill set, but the goal was completely different,
yeah,
right? Like these people started because they have data, they want to do something with it commercially. So data was more like started, the data science, data analytics were more business and commercial side of it. And even till now, even the ImageNet and all those things, it's still research side of AI.
yeah. It's considered research side, but like now it's pretty much mainstream, right? Like we have
Okay.
every startup in YC. This I think last year was an AI company.
Yeah. Let's come there. I'm talking about 2012. We're sitting in 2012.
Yes, absolutely. So in 2012, like the after that, the arms race actually really takes over, right? Like in 2013 or 14, Google acquired
13.
London-based DeepMind, and that's when they got that signal, right? Earlier, they had like two teams within, still had DeepMind and Google Brain. Google Brain was doing its thing, and like they came up with I think Duet. First time
Mm.
in 2014, they came up with like a way to like map language onto geometry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like today we were talking about something. For the famous example is king, queen, royal example, right? So if you have the vector for like king representation for like king and queen, and if you do king minus queen, you'll get man. So that was one of the times they understood that like, you know what, this is generalizing so much so well. This is the way, and we understood from like previous year of like the AlexNet example that like scaling it is gonna add lot, gonna improve the performance substantially. So they were like, okay, we have the recipe now, we have the data, have the this thing, we should just start pumping, creating a recipe together and start generating a lot, right? I think Word2Vec really changed that. Then there was another expert system in like 2016, which was AlphaGo. AlphaGo really changed a lot because the famous move 37 from AlphaGo is what like defeated the top Go player in the world. Go is much, much more harder than chess. Go is and not even close to chess in some sense. I'm not a professional Go player or anything, but it's absolutely harder than the problem space is much bigger for that way. It was not. It's going to be so hard.
Okay.
AlphaGo in 2016 beat the top player called Lee Sedol, and public was like, okay, this is way more than brute force. It's actually thinking ahead and like creating something crazy. Well, good. I think after that, things started changing rapidly. In 2017, we got the famous "Attention is all you need" paper.
Yeah. Let's not come there because that's a big moment. I need a
Yeah,
wow factor before going there. Let's wrap up whatever happened till now
absolutely.
because I have a question in what
Yeah,
happened till now. So looks like I think the next step is the craziest step as you mentioned.
yeah.
Transformer got
It's
released,
gonna
but
pick
before
up way
Transformer got
faster from there.
yep, yep, yep. I mean that's when I think we understood hey something is coming. But no, the question is like Geoffrey Hinton is from Canada.
Yeah.
DeepMind Research Lab is from London. Looks like there are other bigger players in the market, like this from other countries and stuff. Looks like they are the one who contributed till now the more. I don't know. It's not a comparison, but still there are big players. Then how did it become like AI as a primary thing in US, but not other?
What time period are you talking about here?
Before Transformers.
Because before Transformers, it was still considered a hobby thing.
Hmm.
But DeepMind was focused on solving puzzles and video games only. So
Okay.
they famously did Go, then they did StarCraft. So they were just doing puzzles. They were still doing quote unquote research, right? They were like taking all of this, looking at it, looking at the outputs, and they were like, okay, you know what, this is correlating, this is not correlating, and taking those decisions manually. And today they're at a point where they can just call a meeting and create like the next AlphaFold that'll probably get the next Nobel Prize, right? Like they are a giant at this point. But yeah, all of those was built because they got that time to experiment with the foundations, understanding how these behaviors and interactions work. What were the
Okay.
triggers? How was it handled? So I think that
Okay. Okay. So it was more research based and stuff
absolutely.
from Geoffrey Hinton and like all these people, like DeepMind and stuff. And then 2013, like Google acquired DeepMind for
500
500
million, yeah.
million.
Just
Yeah,
half a million.
that's huge. Yeah. And it makes sense because Google would have had a lot of money from the
Yeah,
internet
they do have
boom.
a famous venture arm within that buys a lot of these companies and make basically bets on them.
Yep. Yep. So again, Google again proving that, hey, we want to play different in this game. We want to, like, they invested, which
A
means they
lot.
invested a lot of money in AI. Okay, that happened. That's one wow moment from Google. And another wow moment is, as you mentioned, like the AlphaGo, the
Yes.
game,
The game that was
complicated game that we thought even the machine is not gonna play grandmaster in chess. You're saying that's harder game and it did better in that game, and that's next wow moment. Like, hey, AI is here,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Just when we thought, okay, AI is here and this is the upper limit.
Yeah,
Now
everybody thought this
time to
was ceiling. This is what was gonna show up. Everybody were like, okay, we're gonna start building such specialized systems and everything. Then came the wow generalization moment with like Transformers all paper, like attention is all you need, and the BERT models after that. I think that
let's go slow. Let's go slow because from here every step is very important, I
yeah,
guess.
it takes off
What is
very quickly to be honest. Like after this 2617, once it was Transformers, everything just took over.
Transformers came into play.
Yeah,
Now, for people like a lot of people don't know what is Transformers and what is like attention is all you need. Let's maybe talk about that paper for 5 minutes, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Why is it so important and what is so different in just a paper? It's just a research project. Who's gonna like give a lot of importance to a research paper? But people did. Even people still look up to that project, like that research paper. Why is that?
Honestly, it basically introduced a completely new side to AI to understand text. By that time, if you look at the domain that Transformers was in and that paper was published in, it was mostly like in NLP and text. So before NLP and text, if you look at just this thread alone, all the way back to 1950s, it was, if you see that Turing started solving for text alone. So he would try to decode a code. Then came, before that, there was like Morse code and everything that was like based off of the alphabets in itself. There was another parallel revolution going on within. So like in 1997, famously, they had this LSTM paper. Then came GRUs. There were like RNNs before that in the 60s. And then that goes back to like the perceptron, neuron, and neural networks, right? The basic neural networks. So
Mhm.
RNNs basically started having the recursive neurons, a neuron that would call itself. And in LSTM, we had something called like short-term memory, long-term memory, and we tried to decide which was long, which was short, and store only what was required. And then there was like GRUs, the like gated restricted unit, or like okay, let's cut that off. But yes, we had all of this that were building onto this, and Transformers essentially introduced this topic and of like attention. It basically, from a given sentence, it would try to compute what was more important or not less important, and try to basically retain that information in order to solve other tasks and problems. So it can, a task and problem can be something like text generation, text classification, or like classifying that particular token or something.
So again, like coming back to Transformers, people again, looks like this is the revolutionary step. Like, if you wanna explain what actually was happening in this paper to in layman terms, how would you say that?
So it was a paper that was solely based on the attention mechanism, right?
Mhm.
An attention mechanism is essentially amplifying signals and trying to see the which signal is important, which is not, and just picking very minute information traces for each vector that is there, right? Within a sentence, here when they said they introduced two different concepts. One was a encoder part, which would basically do this thing called bidirectional attention. So every token would basically pay attention. There is some piece of information linked between these two words in the sentence. Whereas the decoder part would basically do only causal attention, which basically attention forward in time. So token A has only no attention to anything, then B would have to A. So it's only growing forward, the attention. So that's the kind of split architecture they had. So they would essentially encode a sentence with this encoder, reduce the dimension to a smaller one, call that cross attention, and then pass it on to the decoder so that it can amplify that signal and basically generate more novel information, right? Like that's what they were like going towards, some sense.
Mhm. I don't.
Then
Yeah, let me pause you there. Maybe a little bit. I'll translate this little bit into even more layman for people who didn't because I feel like this is very important, like for people to understand what happened here. And I think one more thing that also made this paper famous is before Transformers. If you wanna analyze a text based LLM, it always was like linear. So the first word will affect the second word. So we're gonna analyze a bunch of like paragraphs. So the first word, second word can only go linear because that's how the algorithm was until then. So in this paper, they launched, as you said, they launched like self-attention model. How it works is now every word and how every other word is connected with each other and how it forms a meaning could be interpreted without going through linearly. So that makes it parallel processing much easier. We already had GPU in play, not because of AI. So I think this is kind of like a secondary benefit that came out of this. No one expected GPU is gonna become like super useful in AI. So they just developed it for gaming videos, as you mentioned. But now, since the parallel processing got enabled with this attention mechanism, GPU is already there. It's no brainer that why don't we fasten this up? Like, why can't we do this faster? Because we don't have to do this linearly. Now we can do this parallel and we can produce much faster results. That's why that was a game changer. And then again, like as you said, there are now two types of things that you can pick on that, like encoder only, decoder only models, right? Encoder only model is in another like layman terms, it's kind of like take huge chunk of text and analyze what is happening in the happening in the text. A text is encoder only application. A decoder only application is what predicting the next word. The generation of the text is decoder only. So I think this is the time the BERT was born, right? Google decided, hey, let's double down on the encoder only stuff because they had more application around it,
no,
like
I would
encoder
say
only
they were
stuff.
doubling down on it. It's more like they were just like experimenting with this,
No,
but
but they were focusing more on encoder
more on
only, I
encoder
guess.
models. Absolutely, yeah.
Yep, yep.
Encoder as well as encoder variants on how to make the encoder more
Mm,
efficient. They just
okay.
so typical Google fashion. They were just like picking one part and starting iterating.
Yeah. I mean, that makes more sense for Google because like now they have a lot of indexes, like they have a lot of data with them. They can do the encoder stuff because now they can understand the text that they have more, right? Like a translation, because Google Translate was a thing.
Yes.
It was happening. That's when OpenAI was born. OpenAI started the decoder stuff. They were focusing more on the decoder side of it.
So actually, even it's not. I wouldn't say they were the only one focusing on decoder stuff.
Okay.
Before that, Google in themselves were doing all of this research. They had decoder models. The decoder model T5 is one famous model that's been there from like the
Uh,
2018, 19. Uh, or like the 20s mostly, but yeah. But
okay.
yes, so I would say that like couple of things happened here, right? Like one in 2019 is people started understanding that okay, yes, we can basically add all of this information here. And GPT-2, the birth of OpenAI was famously, it's basically an internal Google fight where they wanted to do the decoders, but I wouldn't call it an internal Google fight. I've got something else. But yes, it was OpenAI was essentially born from inside Google, right? Like they wanted to pursue a certain kind of agenda with the decoder models, whereas Google had its own way of doing. things, and they split and they basically created OpenAI, famously quoted Ilya Sutskever, Sam Altman from YC, and Greg Rockman, all the other ones. They banded together, created this. In essence, what they wanted to do was, what if we can ingest or like train this AI model on everything that's there on the internet? And the first step to do that was like, okay, how do we get a structured data set for this? Some structured data set. So the first place that they started looking for was like Wikipedia. GPT-2, the famous data set, it was trained on web text and Wikitext. So it was trained on entire Wikipedia. So it was basically like very factual in terms of like what it found from the internet. What is found, it was relatively believable, I would say. And it basically started creating poems. It had the ability to write poems. It had the ability to write short sentences, emails, and all of that. So basically, people started seeing that, okay, this has a lot of potential, and that's when the prompting really started showing its thing
In GPT.
in GPT-2, like post GPT-2. Like even GPT-2, if you look at the current Hugging Face model that's out there, it will still be used. You can definitely use it for something and fine tune it for your own very tiny use case, right?
So can still find GPT-2
Yes.
in Hugging Face. So in classic OpenAI they did this marketing move as well. Before releasing GPT-2, said, "Hey, we built a model which is super powerful,
So
too dangerous for the public. We're not going to release it," and all those things. Did the marketing stunt, and then they released it.
yes.
Yeah.
That definitely was like a big moment because people were like, "Oh, what are they talking about? How is this going to affect us? Why is it going to affect us?" That's when those the questions started popping up, and people were like, people have started to ask questions as to why
Sorry.
they have started
Yeah.
investing in all of this, right? And investments after that really started skyrocketing. People started putting more and more money into this.
But it's still not mainstream, right? Like,
It's still not mainstream yet.
it's only for developers. Like
Still only for
developers are using it.
it's still early in its shape. Like
Okay.
if you look at so famously right after that they launched GPT-3 and 3.5. That if you look at it, we would write like pages of prompts almost. Like it would take a lot of tokens in to understand and just do this particular classification, for example.
You mean 3?
Yeah, 3 and 3.5. It's like pretty
Okay.
old.
Okay.
After that, GPT-4 is when 4 and 4.0 is when like ChatGPT came out.
No, right? GPT 3.5 is the first ChatGPT.
I thought it was 4.
No, like, so this is what happened in 2022. Two was in place. I think 3 was kind of launched in early 2022.
Yeah.
Before ChatGPT, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion
Yeah.
came out.
They
Like all
started
those were released, and like image
image
generation
models.
models. Yeah. So people are like, okay, now something big is gonna come in the commercial side. People are waiting for it. OpenAI were never meant to launch GPT 3.5 as a commercial consumer based application. It was a research project. A fun fact is developers working in OpenAI had access to GPT 3.5 for months. Like they were using it. And another fun fact is when they launched 3.5 to public, they had 4 already trained and in place.
In crazy, yeah.
Yeah, because like the plan was never meant to be like, okay, we have launched it as an application and it will go viral. They never thought that. And also one more thing, what changed in 2022 is before doing all these things, they figured out RLHF. So they were like, okay, if we have to use this properly, we need feedback. And why can't humans sit and train,
Be the feedback
give
loop.
the human feedback to the LLM and it can use that to learn itself, right? So
Absolutely.
this one was like OpenAI figured this out in 2022. I think even though that looks like something not so fancy, that put OpenAI ahead of the curve. Since
Absolutely.
they did that in GPT-3, they had GPT 3.5. The only reason they launched 3.5 as a web app is to get human feedback. So if we launch it, maybe a couple of people will use it and give feedback so that we can improve the model. That was their motive. They never meant to go viral, make money. They were like, okay, we launch it, and they launched it. And as you mentioned, that was the move. That's when what you said, right? 1 million users in 5 days, 100 million users in
2 months.
2 months, right? In comparison, I think there were charts flowing around. I remember seeing it on like Reddit, LinkedIn, and everywhere. Instagram took 2.5 years to reach 100
Yeah,
million.
exactly.
ChatGPT took like 2 months to get there, and all those things.
So like just like clarify on that ramp up to ChatGPT, right? Like they released GPT-3 early on, right after GPT-2. They trained a big more large. So they trained a much bigger model in scale than GPT-2, taking the same idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's when, as I said, like prompts and all were starting. There was something called instruction tuning that we would do earlier, and that idea came from this paper called like Instruct GPT.
Okay.
Right before like ChatGPT, they were like, okay, this is an instruction, can you follow it? And that was like the premise of that paper and that model. Instruct GPT was like super helpful. It would like respond very aptly.
Okay.
It was more personal, and then that's when like it started getting integrated into GitHub Copilot as well as a coding facing agent. And Codex had come out as a code focused model, and now that's when ChatGPT came up. They were like, okay, for our Instruct GPT model, we need like more data, and we're like, okay, let's do it as ChatGPT, and that's possibly how it came in. We don't know.
Yep.
We're still like,
The
yeah,
rest is history.
rest is
Yeah.
history.
But looking at this, right, you know what feeling I'm getting. Since AI has been hyped too many times, and every time people think that's the breakthrough. What if we are just in like what if like 100 years from now people are doing one more podcast?
Yeah,
We can't even use the word people if it's 100 years from now. Let's say two entities are you doing podcasts and they're gonna talk about, hey, this is the third hype out of the 100 hypes that happened
that
after that.
happened.
So looking at that, but yeah, the rest is history. What happened after ChatGPT and RAG, agentic AI, and all the commercial application side came up. But this is what happened in like 1950 to 2022.
Yeah,
Feels like, and the crazy part is the people that we mentioned, a lot of people like Geoffrey Hinton and all other people who played a apart from my comment on feels like it's a very small circle, they're all alive. They're all working on it. They're all doing something. And another fun fact is people who published Transformers paper, like 8 authors were there, they all left Google to
yeah,
go and start their own
yeah. That's true.
startup
Absolutely.
labs or something. So that's another crazy thing. And they all are working on something. And it feels like kind of like incredible that we are also a part of
This
this era.
community, yeah.
We can literally like go and talk to them if we want. Even though we're talking about history of AI, it feels like we are living with the pioneers of people who built this stuff, except Turing.
Yeah,
But yeah, so this is like an incredible history, what happened. But yeah, I think we'll wrap it up here. So it was a great discussion, Sri.
he's fun for me as well. I had a lot of fun. We'll definitely touch more on this topic, get more deeper in the next episode.
Yep. Let's cover let's if people who are watching this, if they like this video, share it with your friends and make sure we are hitting like 10,000 likes. It's a very ambitious one, but if you are hitting that, we'll do a series on this. But that's the goal. But this was super informative because people don't touch upon this. Whenever people talk about AI, they start with what happened after ChatGPT. But now I think everyone watching this would have an idea of why what happened before ChatGPT is very important too. And why this will change how we think about AI and how we think maybe the next big thing is not even far away, right? Like maybe there'll be another paper like Transformers. There'll be another paper like, or another competition like ImageNet that might happen in the near future. And we'll think that's just what is the next step in AI, right? So looking forward to that. But let's discuss more on what happened after ChatGPT, maybe in the next episode, if everyone wants the next episode. This was super like informative, and
You
looking forward to see what you are building. And yeah, and I see that you're already contributing to AI a lot, like open source contributions and stuff. Keep doing it, and contribute to this more. And maybe, as I mentioned, right, small circle. Hopefully, you might become one of the people in that circle, and we
thank
all can grow together along with it.
absolutely. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Hari. That it was a refreshing opportunity right now. I it's been a while since I like touched on the history of AI, and I think hopefully this video gave a sufficient refresher for everyone. And yeah, what a time to be alive, and it's gonna be a fun ride after this.
Yep. And thanks to Geoffrey Hinton for not giving up on AI when it was going downhill everywhere, for holding on to that. Yeah. Thanks everyone for watching this. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you want more such videos, let me know in the comments. Yeah. See you. See you again. Let me